Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, Hudson Bates, the Associate Head Coach and Recruiting Coordinator for The Ohio State University. Welcome to Bump Set Chat, a podcast for volleyball professionals to come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, I'm super excited. I have Hudson Bates from The Ohio State University, who is the men's volleyball associate head coach and recruiting coordinator. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do the Ohio State. It's just
Now I think you have to pay Ohio State about 5 cents for every time you say the word "the." You have it copyrighted.
Awesome. All right. So welcome to the pod. And what we do to get things started is we start with 3 random questions. So are you ready?
Ready.
All right. What's on the TV playlist right now?
TV. We were watching some new Prime movie last night with Eddie Murphy, some Christmas movie called, I can't remember the name of it, but we got about halfway through. It was pretty good.
Nice. All right. All right. Next question. Favorite home cooked meal?
Ooh, that is gonna be the wife's chicken chili.
Chicken chili. Ooh, nice.
Yeah, lots of good flavor and spice in there, especially this time of the year.
Yeah.
It's a bi-weekly request.
Nice. All right. And your favorite volleyball moment?
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. I have a short-term memory, a very short memory. So I'm going to go with winning the MIVA tournament last year at Ball State, and their gym was a pretty special occasion for me and my coaching career and the rest of the guys on the team, obviously.
Excellent. All right. So let's jump into this. So how does the team look this year?
We're looking really good. We lost one starter, and we have about 4 really good options to fill the void. And it's been a really, really tight race with those 4 guys because it's the outside hitter 2 position that we're having to replace, which, as you know, is a big one.
Yep. Absolutely.
And we'll have a much different, I think, level of physicality at that position this year. So it will be different, but offensively it'll be a little bit of an upgrade, I imagine, for us.
Excellent. And I see like your roster has kids or players from all over the U.S. it seems, and even a couple of you have a fellow Canadian from Ottawa and a kid from over in Denmark.
Yeah, a couple of international freshmen. They're doing great, getting used to the U.S. way of life, and as you can imagine, life as a freshman is a lot of adjustments anyways, but those guys have a little bit more groundwork to make up.
Yeah.
They're doing great. We also have a guy from your neck of the woods from Massachusetts, so we're excited about him too. He's one of the guys that's vying for that starting position with us.
Oh, nice. All right. So let's start off, where are you from?
Yeah, I grew up, did high school in Richmond, Virginia. So I was fortunate that they had boys high school there, and my older sister dragged me out to one of her clinics when I was in the 8th grade, and I fell in love with it and been doing it ever since.
Oh, wow. And now where does boys volleyball rank in the hierarchy of sports, in that neck of the woods, Virginia?
Ooh, back then, 20 years ago, it was definitely not known as being a sport for anyone that was really taking it serious. It was, for me, I was looking for something to do in the off season from basketball and baseball, and the baseball coach was the volleyball coach, so it worked out well. And and then all of a sudden, just really enjoyed the game itself and the culture, and the coaches were always, trying to get us to come out and play more and building really good relationships with us. So it was kind of a culture thing, but also just enjoyed it. Yeah.
And what was the hook it had on you?
I was really small. So I was 5'5" going into my junior year, and then I was 6'5" going into my senior year.
Oh, wow.
So basketball was kind of off the table. I was a good little point guard, but never had a jump shot quite that good. And so, it was easier for me to be a little bit more successful on the court. And I just enjoyed the pace of the game. I enjoyed the competitive edge of it, and I enjoyed really getting after it for a few seconds and then being able to catch my breath for a few seconds.
Yeah, excellent. And now, did you play club as well or just high school ball?
Yeah, I did. So I played high school ball starting freshman year. And then when I got to my junior year, my family was on a very fixed income. My dad was, the only the breadwinner of the family, and we were on a really tight budget. So if I was going to do any club sports, I had to pay for them out of pocket. So my junior year, I was able to get a construction job and save up about $2,000, and I was able to pay my way through being able to play travel ball that year.
Oh, wow. And now, how important was club ball to your development and success to, be able to play after high school?
It was instrumental. It was the whole reason that I got to play in college. When I started playing club ball that junior year, I was like, yeah, there's no chance I'm gonna ever get to play this sport in college. The guys that play in college are way too good, and I'll never get there. But the RBC, the club I played for, they did an awesome job. Just again, having open gyms, having opportunities for me to come in and play as much as I wanted. Had really good coaches that laid a really good foundation of fundamentals for me.
Yeah.
And then eventually, yeah, got me recruited and got me playing in college. So it was really instrumental.
Excellent. And now you played at George Mason, right?
I did. Yeah. I got to play there for 3 seasons. I had a medical redshirt year because I broke this guy
Oh,
about a couple weeks into the season. So yeah, but yeah, had 3 awesome seasons there.
and now what was the recruitment process like? Did you just know you were going to George Mason, or were you looking at other options?
Well, my process was really, really different. I actually started off my career at Long Beach, and I went out there as a freshman and just kind of fell into a little bit of culture shock, being from the East Coast. And
Yeah.
then I had a high school sweetheart that was at George Mason at the time. So we stayed together through that freshman year. And long story short, she's now my wife for
Excellent.
forever, it feels like. And yeah, and we're just so glad that everything worked out, because that was really, I think, the first fork in the road for me as far as my volleyball career went.
Yeah.
Do I stay here in California and only do volleyball and that's what I'm all about, or do I, go for Mason and have a little bit of best of both worlds? And thankfully, it worked out best of both worlds.
Oh, that's excellent. And now, over those 3 years at George Mason, what are, any particular highlight that sticks out, or was it just the whole college experience, playing travel?
For me, a big thing for me is that I realize, and I think that's one of the awesome things that I get to do now as a coach, is I get to help guys really learn who they are throughout their college years. And I learned a lot about myself that freshman year of college. And for me, is I wanted to go somewhere where I knew I was going to have a big impact. And that was a great spot for me to go to Mason and help elevate the program and have a good 3 or 4 years as being a leader and growing my, I guess, volleyball IQ on the court, being kind of like a player coach and developing the relationships with my, the then head coach, which I still talk to on a, weekly basis
Yeah.
now. So yeah, it was a great experience, and for those reasons, it worked out well.
Excellent. And now, for those, what advice do you have for those kids that will be going to college next year, and maybe something you wish you knew now that you didn't know then for that, for your first year?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty good grasp on this, but I think it's something that a lot of freshmen struggle with, is just patience.
Yeah.
Rome wasn't built in a day. You don't have to become an All-American in your first year. So sometimes it's better to just sit back and learn through observation, learn through questions, and, work your tail off, try and make it happen as best you can, but don't get frustrated if the results don't come right away.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, also an adjustment for those freshmen, that are coming in, is like most of the time they're starters. They're that alpha, and now that role has changed. A lot. Few are probably starting, so having that adjustment's got to be a sort of like a wake up call or a kick in the pants for some of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, that's like going back to my personal situation. That's kind of one of the factors that weighed into my decision. I was sitting behind, at the time, what would end up being 4 All-Americans. And did I believe in myself? Sure. But again, like, you got to find the path that's going to be best for you, that you're going to be enjoying and successful in.
Yep, absolutely. And now after college, you trained with the national team and also played some pro?
Yeah, so I was basically just a gym rat for the national team guys. Got in there and practice against them. Learned a lot from, I was there during the 2 years with Hughes last year with the men's team and Allen's first year with the men's team. So it was nice to kind of learn under both those staffs. But yeah, and it was great learning experience. And so I would do that in the off season from, my first couple of years. I played in Puerto Rico, which was awesome back in that time because it was me and I think about 18 other, NCAA players that were down there playing as they called us the refuerzos, the foreigners. So each team was allowed 2 of those foreigners, and I think it was like a 12 or a 14 team league, and just about every team had some U.S. NCAA player on it. So that was a great time. So yeah, that's kind of how I worked my season. Puerto Rico was nice short seasons. I would come home, live in Anaheim, train with the national team, and then when they kicked me out of the gym, once all the national, like the Olympic level guys came back, I would go and play on the AVP. So that was kind of like the start of my AVP career.
Nice. And now, let's talk about the national level. When those, playing at that level, was it a big jump up from the college level to see that, to that next level of elite players and playing with them?
Yeah, for me it was back then when I was playing at Mason, on the East Coast. It was very different. I would say level and parity as far as it is now. Back then we had 2 different divisions in the EIVA. Our main competition was Penn State, and aside from playing those guys, we could get away without playing really consistent and still winning some games.
Yeah.
But when you make the jump up to playing on the West Coast or playing in that gym in Anaheim, like consistency is what it all boils down to.
All right. And any advice for any college players that are thinking about making that jump to pro? Should they go for it and give it a shot if they can?
Yeah, for sure. You got to do it at least for a year or two, see if it's the style for you. My first year in Puerto Rico, I played with an amazing Mexican national team player who graduated from Penn State probably back in like the late 90s. And he was, I think, about 35 at the time when I was, a brand new rookie playing pro my first season. And he looked at me and he goes, "Hudson, I'll tell you this. I have an IT degree from Penn State from about 16 years ago that is absolutely useless." And he's like, "I wouldn't change it for the world, but at some point in your career, you got to like think about what's going to be best for me in the long run."
Yeah.
And he basically encouraged me, like, if you're not loving it, if you're not making, meeting the, I always kind of had like benchmarks that I set for myself. If you're not meeting those, then don't be afraid to hang it up and move on with your career. And that was great advice that I took to heart.
Oh, nice. And I think I saw something from your days down there. You guys started playing with the new balls, the spirally. To me, it's like a playground ball.
Yeah, the Mikasa, the yellow and blue one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually really rough my first year. I was actually just watching some film on a Puerto Rican recruit, and it reminded me that my first year on that team was the first year they switched over the Mikasa ball to be the spiral one, and it moved like crazy on float serves. And basically it was me and this other libero on our team, and he didn't speak any English, and I barely spoke Spanish. So me and him serve receiving 2-man float serves was really difficult given the communication barrier and given the fact that that ball was really tough to pass with your platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet. And now is that ball only played on the men's side or the international side?
Yeah, the international side, and they've changed it up a little bit since then. So it isn't quite as light, it doesn't move quite as much, but it is still a big factor when you're going from the Molten to that Mikasa. It's a big change.
Yeah, I'm an old school guy. I like that, that old school, Mikasa or Tachikara, just, the traditional ball, just, yeah, I jumped in the gym last year for the first time after 20 something years away, and they were playing. I was like, what is this ball? Somebody's like Walmart ball or something, but no, I was like, yeah, it took a little bit to get used to.
Was it the red, white, and blue one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the college ball. And yeah, that thing's pretty easy and pretty true to flight. But yeah, that yellow and blue one tear you up sometimes. I remember being in a match, and there was a match where there was like the AC vent was just blowing crosswind across the court, and the float serve would literally move 10 feet without like on a dime without telling you.
Yeah. Oh shoot. And now in the when you're playing beach, I saw I read you had a chance to represent the Stars and Stripes too.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to go and play in about 3 FIVBs overseas throughout the years, and then I played in a couple of domestic qualifiers. Yeah, I kind of just, nobody else wanted to go. I had enough points to get me in the door, so somebody told me, one of the guys, one of the defenders was like, "Hey, we should register for this. I think we'll get in." I was like, "All right, we'll try it," and it worked
Excellent.
out and got over there, and I think I might have won like 2 matches or something, but it was a fun ride.
Nice. And
Yeah.
now, so after that, you jumped into coaching. What made you want to, jump into coaching?
The wife, most importantly,
Yeah.
wanted a little job security. She was ready to start making a family, and I was, like I said, I took that advice from Yvonne Contreras to heart, and it was my fourth year playing, and I was just I love I loved being a teammate in college. I enjoyed being a teammate as a pro, but as you know, it's totally different culture and totally different dynamics. And for me, it was always team first,
Hmm.
and it wasn't about like my numbers or stats or salary. When you turn pro, that's what it becomes about. And
Yeah.
so for me, I knew it was like going to be a short-lived career.
Yeah. Yeah, that's speaking of like sort of the locker room, that I had a senior on a while ago, and she said that was what she was going to miss most about college was that locker room, because you'll
Yeah,
never have an experience like that again. Pros, people are fighting for the individual jobs, but that locker room in the college, it's just, it's different.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that one. It was awesome to have her perspective on here. And I can totally relate because you'll remember a couple matches, a couple championships, a couple big points or wins, but the things that you take with you after you're done playing in college is just the camaraderie and
Yeah.
locker room and the road trips. And that's what I loved about college. It was about let's put our best group of people together and let's see how much we can make this thing go instead of you're pro. It's just did you hit above 400? Did you pass above a 2.8? Are you going to get a contract
Yeah.
next season? So yeah, for me it was that's why I got into coaching really because
Yeah.
I loved helping a group of people achieve more together than individually.
Yeah. And now when, what was that first coaching experience? Was it a club? Was it, high school?
Yeah, I dabbled in coaching some club teams when I was in college and when I was out in Anaheim. I was a roamer coach for a boys club out there. But my first real stint was that year that I decided to retire, and I was actually applying to be a fireman in a bunch of
Oh,
different
shoot.
fire precincts around Virginia. And then Marymount University decided to start up a Division III program. So I put my name in the hat, and they were brave enough to hire me. And I remember my first match. It was like the first time I had really filled out a lineup card in my career, and I was like, "Oh, well, this is not too difficult."
Oh, wow. And now I can't, D3, you probably don't have the coaching staff you see at D1. You're probably doing a lot of, things you probably wouldn't do. And it being your first time, how, were you overwhelmed or you just took it day by day and figured it out?
Yeah, thankful. I kind of have the temperament where I'm confident in my ability to figure out whatever situation I'm put in. And that's kind of how I rolled with it. I just became an avid learner of what the NCAA system is and how to, be successful on it from the other side. Read a lot of books, read a lot of different ideas of how to develop culture, how to develop leadership. Yeah, I just dove in, and I didn't have to worry too much about the X's and O's, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
I had a pretty good background. That was probably one of the best things that helped me get in, enjoy, and understanding the science behind coaching is when I was in Anaheim with the national team. One of the assistant coaches got me hooked up with this company called Gold Medal Squared, and I learned kind of how to teach based on motor principles, and it really helped a lot.
Excellent. And now you just touched on leadership. In your opinion, is leadership something that somebody has naturally, or is it something that people learn over the course of time?
I think it's both. Yeah, I think you come across people that have some natural leadership tendencies, some skills that are pretty um, important to be a good leader. You got to have some emotional intelligence. You got to have some good communication skills, and those things can be taught. But I think there are some people just kind of like the tool shed analogy. Some people have more of those tools in their shed to begin with, and
Yeah.
Other people just got to make a couple more trips to Home Depot and get them.
There you go. I like that. And now, adding, continuing on to the leadership, sort of discussion, in college, you're rotating every 4 years. You're getting new people in. Do you find and try to identify your leaders, potential leaders early in their, maybe their second or third year to, just be prepared to always have leadership ready to go for every year?
Yeah, it's nice if you're able to kind of develop that. That's something that we definitely try and do as guys age up and as guys come in with some of those natural skills. One of our seniors has really kind of been a leader ever since he was a freshman. And it was just kind of nice. Like we saw that in him, and it's just kind of nice in his second and third year to kind of see him dive into that role a little more comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
But then even in the recruiting process, there's certain positions that we're recruiting, like libros and setters. The intangibles are just as important, if not more important, than the skill set on the court. Yeah. And so, as a setter, you got to have some of those leadership intangibles because you're the general out there and you're basically our eyes and ears. So we want to have that good relationship with our setters.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And now, after Marymount, what was your sort of next steps into, on your way to Ohio State?
Yeah. So then after 4 years at Marymount, a guy that I was fortunate enough to play with in high school, he went off and played at Penn State and he got into coaching, and then he got the head coaching job at the University of Virginia on the women's side. So then I was with him for 2 years, and then Birch got the head coach job here, and then he called me up. So I've kind of just lucked into some really good positions where I haven't ever really been looking to move on, but opportunities have come across that have just been too good to pass up.
Nice. And now, what was that transition like? Let's talk D3 to D1. What was some of the bigger adjustments?
Yeah, you want to talk volleyball first, or
yeah, let's go volleyball first.
Volleyball. So yeah, I remember going into the gym and watching one of the women's practices the first time, and I was like, man, these ladies have some really, really good ball control, because I was coming from coaching guys that just wanted to smack the ball the whole time. So the game, it took me, I would say, a few months to really understand the game at that level. And so I had to study a lot of film and talk to a lot of longtime coaches on the women's side and really dive in and understand kind of the nuances and differences from what I played versus what I coached versus what I was about to start coaching.
Yeah.
And then kind of the same thing happened when I got here to Ohio State. The game here is obviously much faster and more physical than what I was coaching at the D1 women's side. So it was funny to me. I remember in my first probably 7-8 months when I was here, I was like, man, I don't know if my eyes are going to catch back up to the speed of this game, but it just took so much longer than I expected it to.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But thankfully it did eventually.
And now, adding into that sort of, coaching women's versus coaching men's, with men's, it's quick, quick rallies, the speed of the serve and everything like that. Whereas the women's side, the longer rallies, more of a finesse game. Was there a lot of adjustments you had to, sort of learn from a coaching standpoint? Because it's really sort of two different games, even though it's the same game.
Yeah. You prioritize a couple of things differently based on which one you're coaching. We spend a lot of time serving, a lot more time serving in our gym here than we did there.
Yeah.
Defensive systems are completely different. You can do some things from the physicality standpoint on the men's side that you probably can't get away with defensively on the women's side. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of nuances, but at the end of the day, it's like you're just finding a way to get the ball on their ground and keep it off of yours.
Absolutely. Do women's programs have the same amount of scholarships as the men's programs, or every school is different?
Every school could be different, but the NCAA maximum amount is 12 full rides on the women's side, and then only 4.5 divided up on the men's side. And so there's head count sports in NCAA Division I, which is footballs, basketballs, and women's volleyball. I think those are the only 4 head counts. So that means you can't divide up a full ride scholarship. It's you either get a full ride or you don't for that year. And on the men's side, we divide up the 4.5 as best we can among everybody on the roster.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. So that sort of makes it tough to try to build build, strong teams when you just, you're sort of limited to that.
Yeah, for sure it is. You really, it comes down to an art and a science a little bit. You got to
Yeah.
put your eggs in the basket that are going to win you some points, and try and get good supporting cast around them.
Yeah. As your role as an associate head coach and recruiting coordinator, sort of what are your sort of responsibilities within the team, during practices and matches?
So I'm also the offensive coordinator. I do a lot of our setter training, and I focus a lot on offensive system. We've, every year we add a different layer to it, and try and experiment with a couple of different things on the offensive side. And that's probably one of my most favorite aspects of the job, is just being a little mad scientist and throwing in some different wrinkles and seeing how they work. And so yeah, that's what consumes my time with the guys that we currently have. And then aside from that, just doing whatever else I can do to help out with Coach Birch. He's got a lot on his plate, so he does a great job delegating a few things for me to handle. And then recruiting takes up a lot of my time. I try and if a recruit sends me a personal email, I try and respond to all of them and kind of let them know if it's a kid we can put on our radar, or if it's a kid that I think needs to look elsewhere. I just try and get that communication out there really quickly and purposely to them.
Yeah. All right. And now, reflecting on last year's season, you guys had a great season. What do you think were some of the key factors that contributed to the achievement and, the plan to build on that success forward?
Well, we really struggled through the COVID years. During that COVID season, we were starting, I think, about 4 freshmen. And so that's the group of guys that were juniors for us last year. And they really did an incredible job of just working through the growing pains of those first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And so last year was, I think, the culmination of them obviously being incredibly talented on the court. But then last year was the complete opposite of the year before, where when we got into the clutch in the red zone, they knew how to finish. They had been there. They weren't worried about it. They weren't stressing it like they had the year prior. So just being battle tested was huge for us. And we didn't start off great at the beginning of the season. About halfway through, we made a switch at a couple positions that ended up just really helping us take off.
Yeah. Oh, very awesome. And now, sort of adding into that, so Ohio State has a strong athletic tradition, and how does the university's culture and support system contribute to the success of the men's volleyball program? And and how do you tap into that from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's an institution where it's the best of both worlds. It's good academics. It's not Stanford, Princeton, but it's high academics. We don't like that team up north, and we know they have really good academics. So we're always trying to one up them and catch up to them on the academic side. And they set a pretty high bar. So it's a good standard and good, I think, carrot for us to chase after. So the academics are really good. We have one of the best business schools in the country, and our School of Engineering is top ranked as well. So we have that going for us. And then on top of that, we have one of the best funded athletic departments in the country. And then some of the programs within our athletic department are really top notch. We have this leadership institute that just does an amazing job of preparing student athletes for jobs once they graduate. The goal of that program is to reach 100% of student athletes to have a job or a pro contract before they graduate. And that percentage has been rising every year since we've started that program. I think last year was at 96%.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's another thing. I think I tell recruits all the time, like, you come here because you want to be treated like a professional athlete, and you want to be pretty much guaranteed to have a job at the end of 4 years.
Yeah. Nice. And, what is that, that first practice of the year is, what is that like for the freshmen coming in and, they're at, they're at college level playing now, what is that experience for them?
Yeah, we ease them into it. We have those compliance meetings and the not so fun necessary meetings on the first day. And then we basically just put out a bunch of different lineups and play a lot of sixes in those first couple practices.
Yeah. And now one thing I've, talking to the different coaches from the men's and the women's side, to me, it seems like the men's program has an advantage when it comes to it being a winter sport because your athletes have already sort of acclimated to the college life and now they can step into, being that athlete versus the women's side. It's sort of like they hit the ground running and there's not a whole lot of time to, to prepare.
Yeah, yeah, and that's an interesting aspect on the women's side is, when they'll get their freshmen to enroll early over the summer and hopefully get a little bit of preseason in with them that way. Yeah, thankfully, excuse me. Thankfully, we don't have to worry about that. Like you said, we have the whole fall that it's just, get acclimated.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is nice to go through the 8-hour weeks, the 20-hour weeks in the fall. Basically, the guys get about a month where they are getting a taste of what the spring's going to be like. And then we get about a week and a half here at the end of December, beginning of January before classes start, where that's always been, as a player and a coach, that's always my favorite time of year because you really don't have anything other than volleyball to worry about.
Nice. And now, so when the season starts, what does a travel week look like from Monday to, finally getting home on a Saturday night or a Sunday?
Yeah, so we train in the afternoons. Once we hit the spring, we're morning time block in the fall, but we'll train from about 2 to 5 or 5:30. Yeah, I think 3 to 5 or 5:30. We're not doing 3.5-hour practices. So yeah, we'll go for 2 to 2.5 hours, and then the guys will head over right across the street is our weight room facility. So they'll go get a lift in with our strength coach, and they'll spend about 30 minutes to an hour with him after every practice session, regardless of whether it's like a full-on lift or maybe it's just mobility or conditioning. But he's probably, aside maybe even more so than the three of us on staff, he's an integral part of our team success. He's just amazing at getting the guys motivated and developing really good relationships with them off the court.
Yeah.
So they spend a lot of time with LP, our strength coach. And then hopefully they don't have night class, but sometimes they will have a night class after a practice session. But that's pretty much our schedule from Monday to Thursday. If we have an away match on Friday, we'll take off on Thursday after practice, hit the road. We usually bus everywhere in conference, except sometimes we're going to St. Louis, or actually we just added Queens into the conference, so we'll be flying to those. We get nice sleeper buses for the above 6-hour road trips.
Nice.
And so, yeah, we'll hit the road on Thursday night. We'll get a little serve and pass at the opponent gym on Friday morning. We'll play Friday night, play again somewhere else Saturday night. And then a lot of times we'll have to bus home on Saturday night and not end up getting back to Columbus sometimes, 2 a.m. on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Oh, wow. What impact does analytics play into your coaching space? Do you guys take advantage of, every sort of all the things analytics can bring?
Yeah, it's huge. Our other assistant coach, Maloney, on staff, he's really our analytic number guy. He's big into baseball, so those two kind of go
okay,
hand in hand. And then that's kind of Birch's expertise too. Like those two guys, if you ever want to talk analytics and numbers, those two guys are great resources. So they're awesome resources for me too, because that's never been my forte. But we've been big into, we do volumetrics with the guys, and all of our practices get coded, and the guys can go and pull up all their stats from practice, and I use that a lot to do film with the guys.
Yeah.
We'll go and tag and comment. And then we've been using Data Volley the last, 4 seasons, and we're switching over to Volley Station this year.
Oh, cool. And now, with volleyball, it's not just about the physical skills; it's also the mental toughness. How do you work with your players to, keep their mental game, on point?
Yeah, the mentals sound like Marshawn Lynch there. The mentals. We address it a lot in our culture workshops. We'll talk about every other week or once a month, just kind of like whatever aspects that we're seeing on the court that the guys are struggling with. Like I said earlier, 3 years ago, it was finishing in the red zone. Thankfully that's something that we've kind of turned into a strong point. And so there's tons of other things that we'll address as season goes on in those meetings. But another resource that we're fortunate to have is just a really good built out sports psychology department. So we have
Nice.
about 4 full-time sports psych doctors that the guys can go and use as resources. We'll pull them in once or twice a year just to do some team activities with us, whether it's mindfulness or whatever else that they feel like would be beneficial.
Hmm.
So those are really good resources that we're able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. For those freshmen coming in from high school to college, do you find they adjust to the college game rather quickly, or there's a bit of a learn an adjustment curve for them?
Yeah, it depends on the person, depends on the position, depends on the situation they're coming into. There's certainly some phenoms out there that are recruited and pretty much not guaranteed, but they're told, when you get here, you're going to have the keys to the car and you're going to be our guy and we're going to build a championship program around you. And so when a guy like that comes in, it's pretty rare and special, and oftentimes they're given that leeway because they
Yeah.
have the skill set to back it up. um, for the most part, yeah, it's a pretty big jump. The pace of the game, the level. If you're an outside hitter, the level of servers that you're all of a sudden having to face is really, really another caliber.
Yeah.
If you're a middle blocker, the pace of offenses that you're having to defend against are just really hard to like jump on a court and be good at stopping. And then, if you're a setter, I think, like I said earlier, if you're a setter, it's hard to just understand how to navigate an offense and be in control of everything as matches get really intense.
Yeah.
So
And
there's a
also,
learning curve for everyone.
absolutely. And also, you add in like, the kids coming in, they're playing now against guys that might be, 22, 23. So they've got 4 years of, just the physicality and just that much more experience is an adjustment too that, they never saw in high school.
Yeah. 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 We actually had a former Navy guy on our team a couple years ago that was like a bomb diffusing technician. And he was I want to say he was like a 24-year-old sophomore. So yeah.
So he had some experiences.
Yeah,
Or
exactly. Not so much on the court, but that guy's not getting rattled in the red zone.
no, absolutely not. So now, are you seeing any, common bad habits or things that need to be fixed for the high school kids that are coming up that you wish coaches or high school coaches or club coaches would have worked on sort of prior?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a couple of big ones that I don't know if it's something that can be. I think a lot of times it's just like what's being focused on in training.
Yeah.
And then a lot of that just comes down to the different clubs and high school coaches base knowledge. You're gonna teach what you know.
Yeah.
But I would say that for each position, there's a couple that could for sure help athletes get more consistent. I find myself telling setters that you got to get square on contact or on release pretty often. And to me, it seems like that's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then for blockers, we have to. That's probably the hardest part for us is retraining blockers, the motor pattern of how to get their hands over the net quickly instead of like above the net and then pressing.
Yeah.
And then for passers, just passing outside their midline. So many clubs and coaches, I think, still teach passing your midline and face where you want the ball to go.
Right. Yeah.
And that works great when you're passing against 40-mile-an-hour float serves, but when you're passing against an 80-mile-an-hour jump serve, you're not going to have time to turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I could go through a list and like come up with like a top priority for each position.
Now, is that also, sort of learning that new technique of sort of that scoop, single arm sort of digging thing as well, because of the speed of that game now is just getting to that point?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we've always known that relaxed body parts move faster than tense ones.
Yeah.
So we've always taught our athletes to be relaxed up top and, stable down low. But then, yeah, I think that's a major habit that gets formed in the juniors level is as soon as someone goes to serve or as soon as someone goes to spike a ball at you, you put your platform together and
Right.
then you're chasing. So yeah, I think that's a great thing that's become more popular and more people are understanding. Yeah, it's okay to keep your hands apart. You've got way better range when your hands are apart and relaxed than when they're tense and together.
Yeah. Excellent. And now, so during the season, are there any games that are circled on the calendar? Maybe that team up north, or is there certain nights of the year, like senior night, that you just look forward to every year?
Yeah, senior night for sure. Senior night's always I mean, it's awesome and it's terrifying at the same time. You know, you recruit these guys when they're juniors in high school, and then you see them turn into like incredible young men. And then all of a sudden, you got to say bye to them after 4 years. So it's definitely wrenches at your heart a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's always a special night. We have a couple traditions that we do, and they're pretty awesome, and we take them to heart. And then, yeah, I would say, I don't know, anytime that someone's ranked higher or thought of to be better than us,
Yeah.
like that's a big match. Like we want to go prove everyone wrong.
Nice. Excellent. So now, when the season is over, sort of, what happens next? Is that when sort of prepping for next season starts? One answer I got from the UConn freshman was next season starts today.
Yeah, it depends on. I think it depends on the ending of the season.
Yeah.
You know, if your season ends pretty early, and for us, if it ends pretty early in April, then yeah, you might move on a little quicker and be a little bit more amped to get into that next season. If your season goes in towards a little bit longer in May, you might spend a couple more days enjoying it and spending a little bit more extra time with the seniors.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, you know, for sure by the end of May, you're gearing up and getting some foundation started for your summer planning, and you've already got your recruiting calendar all figured out by then. But you're I don't know. I think you're ready to move on for
Yeah.
sure by the time into May comes.
Yeah, I didn't even think of this. So for your seniors, when that season ends, it's ending at the same time, pretty much that, their college life is ending too. So it's not like on the women's side, you can just sort of, you got a few more months to enjoy college life. But yeah, senior end, your volleyball ending and your sort of college career ends. That's a
Yeah,
tough one.
yeah, it is. I mean, there's everyone wants to finish with a win at the end of the season, but usually there's only one team that gets to do that.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it's just a lot of emotions, a lot of memories that flood through during that last match.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, so the season's over. Are the players encouraged to sort of? I'm sure they're encouraged to do weight training over the summer. Are they encouraged to play any ball or play beach?
Yeah, play as much as they can. We have, I would say a handful of guys that will go home and play a lot of beach. We encourage that like no other. You know, my beach background and just knowing how good that game is for developing everything on the court is huge. Then yeah, we give them a workout packet that they have to get through, and they've come up. With one of the, I think, cool things that's developed with our culture since we've been here is the guys have really developed some really innovative and awesome ways to hold each other accountable during the summer to make sure that everybody's getting after it and putting in the work.
Oh, nice.
I think that's kind of one of the things that separates some of the teams that hit the ground running versus some of the teams that take a little while to get there is who does the work during the summer when nobody's watching.
Yeah, very true. And now, is recruiting a season long, like a year long thing, or does recruiting really take place after your season's over?
Yeah, it's throughout the season. I was just down in Dallas I'll do a lot of clinics throughout the country, and I'll pair them up usually with a tournament to go to in the area. So yeah, it's year round, and there's situations where we'll finish a match in California on a Friday night, and I'll hop on a red eye to Florida to watch a tournament there on Saturday. So yeah, the nice thing about, I think that's a big difference on the men's versus the women's side is on the men's side, recruiting can be as strenuous as you want it to be.
Yeah.
So if you want to go to the local regional tournaments and find some diamonds in the rough, that's completely on you, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
On the women's side, you got to be at everything at all the time.
And now, are you going to, mainly club tournaments or AAU tournaments? And, do you hit high school, level tournaments at all? Or is it really, your club and your AAU stuff?
Yeah, it's club AAU. I'll usually do a high school championship once, maybe one or two of those a year. And that's usually for a guy that is already committed to us.
Yeah.
He's coach. My state tournament's coming up at this time. We're in the semifinals, and we'll try and make those special tournaments to see those guys.
Nice. And now, what kind of qualities do you look for in potential, players that would make them a Buckeye?
Hmm. Yeah, like I said, the intangibles are huge. Just kind of getting to know them and their family background, kind of just try and figure out what kind of foundation has your family laid for you as far as work ethic and morals and ethics. Those things are huge for us. Our AD, Gene Smith, he's incredible at just getting the message out there that we'll develop the talent, but you got to come in with a good base of humanity and understanding how to be successful on your own. So that's kind of what we look for: guys that are more independent, guys that are going to work without us having to like drag them into it.
Yeah. And now, so this one's sort of like next question is sort of along the lines of, the baseball analytics. With baseball, you've got your specialty roles with your pitchers and everything like that. When you're looking for players, are you looking for a specialist like that 7-foot, middle blocker who may not be the greatest on defense? Or are you looking for some, that kid that might be 6'9", 6'10" for your middle, but he's well-rounded in all aspects of the game?
Yeah, I think you got to have a little bit of both on your roster. I think there's some programs out there that do it awesome job of recruiting guys on potential, and those guys, like when they hit, those teams are really, really good. And then I think you got to have a little bit of you know what you're getting when they come through the door freshman year, and then a little bit of, hey, if this kid pans out, he's going to be pretty dynamic and pretty special down the road. And then there's a couple, I wouldn't say metrics, but a couple of non-negotiables that you got to look at from each position. If you're an attacker, you got to have a shoulder that is going to be serviceable at our level. And yeah, every position has a couple of things like that you got to check the box in those. Yep. And then as long as you check the box in those, we'll start doing our research and figuring out if you're the type of person that we feel will be successful in our environment.
Nice. And speaking of research, we're a global, volleyball is a global game. Recruiting, on a global level now, like we were just talking about, or earlier, you've got a kid from Ontario, kid from Europe. How are you finding the players? Are they finding you, or you're sort of, like you said, you're going to these club tournaments, but are you encouraging kids who want to play at Ohio State to send you an email, send you the some video?
Yeah. Usually those international guys find us. They'll hire an international agent. The agent will reach out, or, a couple of them, they've reached out individually, and honestly, reaching out personally, individually is certainly the way to go. But yeah, our Canadian freshman is a pretty interesting story. I went up to a tournament actually to watch another recruit, and I saw him in the gym, and he was so good, I figured he was already committed. But thankfully in Canada, they're a little bit later on the recruiting timeline than we are on the boys' side. So he still wasn't committed anywhere. We ended up getting him. So yeah, it's recruiting oftentimes, as much as you want to plan it out and have a process, just comes down to dumb luck sometimes.
And now, on the coaching side of things, and what's sort of been your most significant lesson you've learned as a coach, and how's it influenced your coaching philosophy?
I learned a lot those 4 years at Marymount. So I always just yeah, like you said, I always encourage coaches when they're thinking about getting into it. If you have an opportunity to head coach at Division III level, then do it, because you will learn a lot about not only the coaching world, but you'll learn a lot about yourself and what it takes to be successful. So yeah, I think, like I think I said earlier, one of my answers was patience, but that was a big lesson for me in those 4 years. I think it's sometimes hard going into coaching from being an athlete, because you don't have that patience. You're like, just do it this way, it's easy. But you got to realize, like, everybody learns different ways and different paces. So you really have to learn how to communicate the best way that the athlete's going to hear it, make it enjoyable and fun. And then again, just like we tell athletes all the time, like, you can't focus on the results. You got to focus on the process and the daily work that you're doing. Because I know a lot of coaches that get really just worked up and in a bad place because they're just focused on the wins and losses.
Yeah. For that, athlete who's playing in high school right now, and he has aspirations or dreams to play in sort of Division One, what, any advice you have for that kid?
Yeah, it's kind of his first job at being a salesman. You have to sell yourself, and you can't rely on a recruiting service or a parent or a club coach or a high school coach to do it for you. Excuse me. When I don't automatically delete them, but I don't read them as closely, emails when I get them from a high school coach or a parent,
Yeah.
as I do from a young man. Like, all of us coaches want to hear directly from you. We want to know you're that independent and you think highly enough of yourself to be where you're emailing. So yeah, I think that is a big one. Like, do the work yourself. It's your first important job of your life, is to get you where you want to go.
Nice. Great answer. All right. And speaking of a high school coach, so here's a question from a high school coach. How do you approach scouting and preparing outside hitters for specific opponents or defensive schemes at the Division I level? And how can high school players begin to develop their volleyball IQ and sort of in that regard?
Okay, so you're talking about helping outside hitters prepare for a certain team's defense?
Yeah.
Okay. Then yeah, I think first you got to chunk it down into what's their out-of-system defense, what's their in-system defense, and then watch them film on the tendencies, what they do against other hitters. But then it's always risky scouting defenses because a good defense is going to adapt to the offense.
Yeah.
So I think the easy way out answer is just build a big toolbox and be prepared with a bunch of different shots.
Yeah.
But then, there's definitely times where we've seen a hole in a defense where a team counters super heavy, and we'll practice the line seam shot to go over the 3-man block. There's some different schemes that you can do. We have our out-of-system offense is designed to be contacted a few feet inside the antenna. But if we see an opponent defense releases their pin blockers early, then we'll move that set location to like 10 feet inside the antenna, so that pin blocker and sometimes that middle blocker are no longer a factor. So I think just teaching young athletes how to read a block in the moment and then give them a vague idea of what the defense might be doing behind them.
All right.
Because especially if you're asking a 16, 17-year-old athlete to read 6 players on a court, that's never going to go well.
No.
But if you can get them to kind of understand and pick up on a couple patterns as they're watching the set leave the setter's hands, that can help a lot.
Excellent. All right. And then sort of adding on to that, any advice for high school hitters to improve their hitting accuracy and power, or, what drills or techniques do you find most effective for this?
Feet to ball, 100%. That's when I go around and do clinics, at least one portion of it is going to be footwork. I think oftentimes coaches spend a little bit too much time working on arms and shoulders and torsos, which is really incredibly important and valuable. But it doesn't matter. I say this all the time. It doesn't matter how good your shoulder is if you can't get your feet to the ball.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to be best and most successful with contacting really high and really hard at the top of our reach. But so often you'll see players with bad feet and they're contacting the ball over their head. They're contacting outside their shoulder column. And so then what's the point of all that shoulder work that we've done if you can't use it?
Yeah.
So pretty much the way that I train everything is from the ground up. You get your feet to the ball, and then you can learn how to torque. You can learn how to put some spin on it with your wrist. You can learn how to joust and throw on those tight sets if your feet are really good at getting underneath the ball. So yeah, footwork for sure.
Excellent. And speaking of clinics, do you do a lot of clinics over the summer to help development of the kids?
Yeah, we host a big one here at OSU in July. We're actually hosting one this week, a little Friday night clinic because there's a big tournament down the convention center. So we do 2 or 3 of those in-house every year. And then, during the summer, I'm probably on the road maybe twice a month doing a clinic in a different place.
Yeah.
Just to kind of like, it's a great way for me to get to interact with other club coaches and club directors, and then also really get to work with some athletes not one-on-one, but get to actually coach them up in their environment. Because I say this all the time in clinics too. It doesn't matter how good you are at the beginning of this clinic. It really matters how much you can learn in the 2 or 3 hours that I have with you. Because that's what really impresses coaches is, you are who you are, but how much you can grow in the course of 2 hours tells us a lot about your ability on and off the court.
Yeah, that's very true. And now, over the years of coaching, what have been some of the more sort of challenging things you've had to deal with?
Um, well, it's funny because when I was in college, I remember at Mason, my head coach didn't have any staff. Like, he had a volunteer some years, but he was doing everything by himself. And so I just remember thinking how easy his job was and how he must not have to be in the office that much and work that hard. So I think that was the first realization is just how many hours you got to put in to really be good at it. And then, yeah, I just think that there is a ton of resources out there to help you, but you gotta kind of believe and trust in yourself a little bit too.
Nice. Since you started coaching, any major changes, that you've noticed from a coaching style or philosophy over the years? Well, I've talked to some players or some coaches. There was that style of just grind it out, go, go, go. And now over time it's changed more of the, big brain thinking, mental, the mental aspect of two-way communications with,
Right.
from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah. I call that collaborative learning. I would for sure say that my first 3-4 years of coaching, I was an authoritative teacher, and I was very much like, it's going to be this way, and here's why. I at least had the science and the numbers and the analytics to back it up. But nowadays, I'm much more like, hey, let's figure it out together. And I'm much more question based. Like, tell me what you saw there. Tell me why you did that. And at first, athletes are like, is this a trick question? Are you just going to be a mean person to me if I give you the wrong answer? And like, you kind of have to coach them out of giving you the answer that they think you want to hear. So that has been certainly a big change in my, I think, coaching philosophy. And then I would just say, like, the way the NCAA has gone in the last 8 to 10 years. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, wrong or right, but athletes have a lot more voice and power than they did back when I played. And for me, I think it's great because as a coach, you now have to really develop the relationships and enjoy your athletes have to enjoy playing for you. And I think motivating athletes is kind of the art behind the science. You have to get good at really motivating athletes to want to come in and work really hard. Like, you can't just tell athletes we're going to be a hardworking culture because that's what it takes to win. You got to really be a little bit more creative in your messaging and your motivation.
Yeah. And now, speaking of the game itself, what do you think of the state of, sort of, let's go men's college volleyball in where it is today?
I think the game's an awesome product. My one gripe is I wish we could get back to calling throws.
Yeah.
Especially on the men's side, offense is already at such an advantage. If we're giving attackers the ability to change direction of the ball from high to low, it's just unfair for the defense. The defense needs more help. And I think, like you said earlier, some people enjoy watching the women's game more because of long rallies and because you can see the play develop. If the men's side wants to get some of that going, then they can't give offensive players advantages.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a big one. And then the way the game is televised needs to change. I was just watching a match in Puerto Rico, this big buzzer beater tournament that they have down there. And most of the match was all profile from the side, from the sideline. And it's kind of like ice hockey, you know, it's hard to appreciate ice hockey from the sidelines on TV. I think that's a great comparison because when
Yeah.
you go to a hockey game in person, it's one of the best games you can watch it
Mm-hmm.
live. But it's hard to watch the puck. The game's fast. You don't really get to see it if you're not at the right camera angle. And we're in the same thing when it comes to volleyball.
Yeah.
We got to get more inline angles. We got to get more replays like right after the fact so people can really see the play develop. So yeah, I think those two things, if they could change, it would help a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point because my daughter, she prefers watching the women's game because the men's are just so fast and it's done, and it's
Yeah,
like you can't appreciate the how high these guys are jumping, and just like you said, from the end line, seeing how the play is developing is just such a better way to watch it.
right. Yeah, it's like put put average Joe out there,
Yeah,
just for a comparison height, and like so they can see how big and athletic the
right.
guys are.
Yeah,
Because that was one of the things I remember growing up, like going to an NBA game or NFL game, like, man, these guys are gigantic. And then all of a sudden, growing up and being in a sport where the average height is, 6'6", 6'7", and guys are over 200 pounds, like, oh, these guys are pretty big and athletic too.
exactly. Yeah.
But you never realize that from watching it on the TV.
No, not at all.
But it's understandable. Like, I think so many people like the women's game because, yeah, you can track the ball and
Yeah.
the cameras are more set up for the women's game. I think the average frames per second is like 60 or
Mm-hmm.
something like that nowadays. And when the ball's moving 80 miles an hour and you're at 60 frames per second, the ball's gonna be 4 feet a different place from the next frame.
Yeah. And even attracting sort of that sort of younger generation, if you're watching your TikTok shorts or YouTube shorts, the it's too fast for a person to see when, you're watching some of the professional stuff and they do that side angle of somebody doing a great jump serve, like you don't see it. And then
Right.
you spend more time trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. Some of the coolest videos is when people were putting those GoPros on their heads and
Yeah.
you get the camera that has like the stabilizers but can kind of follow the play along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just being more creative in the audio video space will
Yeah.
really help the game.
Absolutely. And now, so, you're putting down the whistle end of the day. You're not watching any film. What do you like to do away from the gym?
Oh man, I got 3 kids, so usually taxi service.
Yeah.
We're into lacrosse and volleyball and basketball and gymnastics and all that good stuff. So that's the majority of my time playing with them. We live on an awesome cul-de-sac, big backyard, so lots of fun games around the house. And about 2 weeks ago, the wife told me I was renovating our basement into a Ninja Warrior course. So that's taking up my time right now.
Excellent. All
Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, Hudson, thank you so much for doing this, man. We came to the end of the pod, but before I go, like with past guests, I asked them to suggest somebody in your circle or peer or somebody you've worked with over the years that may have a good story to come on and share with us.
Yeah, I'll recommend my George Mason head coach. His name's Freddie Chow.
All
He's
right.
a head coach at Old Dominion University on the women's side now, and he's just an awesome resource. He's got his, master's or doctorate in psychology, and he's coached at men's, women's, tons of different levels. So he'd be a great resource for you.
Excellent. All right. Well, we'll be reaching out, and thank you again. Best of luck for the upcoming season.
Yeah, thanks for having me.